Welcome to Ask the Alzheimer's Expert, where every Thursday at noon we talk about common questions and issues that people living with dementia and their caregivers face. Today's guest is Dr. Carl Hill. He is the Alzheimer's Association's Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. And he's here today to talk with us about the very important issue of racial and ethnic disparities in dementia. Please feel free to post any questions that you have in the comments or call our 24/7 helpline. Welcome, Dr. Hill.
Oh, thanks for having me, Nicole.
We appreciate you taking the time for us today.
Oh,
Um, let's dive into this really important topic. According to the Alzheimer's Association's 2020 facts and figures, older Blacks, African Americans, and Hispanic Latinos have a higher risk of developing dementia. Most studies show it's 2 times as likely for older Black African Americans to develop dementia than older whites, and that rate is about 1.5 times for older Hispanic Latinos. Can you talk to us a little bit about what are the reasons for those differences that we're seeing?
absolutely, and thanks, Nicole. This is I think, really important research question. Disparities, the populations who are most at risk, really demand our attention from a number of perspectives, particularly for rigorous research. So despite some, evidence that, the influence of genetic risk factors on Alzheimer's and other dementias may differ by race, genetic factors do not really appear to account for the differences we see in prevalence or incidence among racial ethnic groups. So, researchers are starting to look at factors such as cardiovascular disease and diabetes, which two additional risk factors for Alzheimer's being more common among African Americans and Latinos. And even a step, broader in context, socioeconomic and environmental factors, can also contribute to a person's susceptibility to dementia. Things like lower levels of quality education or access to healthcare, access to quality healthcare, higher rates of poverty, and even stress, and how that might influence behavior. So there's a wide range, I think, of determinants and factors here that researchers should explore.
Yeah, certainly there's just so much more to learn in this area of dementia research. I think we've probably just begun to scratch the surface of really understanding why those differences occur. And I know one of the areas in which we see some of those differences too are in the rate of diagnosis, and getting access to appropriate treatment once someone's diagnosed. Can you talk a little bit about what some of the barriers are that older Black African Americans and Hispanic Latinos face in that area?
Absolutely, yeah, and so staying connected with a doctor or a dementia specialist is so critical and important. Having awareness of what to do when a loved one is experiencing memory loss, or there's a there's a really thinking of a family member being affected by Alzheimer's or another dementia. So this concept of equity really means that everyone has the resources, that is the knowledge and the places to connect to information about Alzheimer's and other dementia. All of those, I think, that concern and awareness and education about the disease itself is so critical and important, and it really makes engaging with communities, diverse communities, very important. So we all have a common understanding of things like the 10 warning signs, or the ability to have our questions answered about Alzheimer's. And you mentioned the 1-800 number. So I think this is a really important opportunity for enhancing the ways that we share resources, the Alzheimer's Association's valuable resources, with all communities in pursuit of this equity. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think anything we can do to get the word out to encourage people to use the 24/7 helpline, visit the website to learn more information, is key. Is key, and we know we have lots more people that we want to reach out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So one of the areas that is also a big concern when we're talking about racial and ethnic differences and kind of some of the reason for the limitations of our understanding are around the lack of diversity among research participants, particularly in clinical trials. Can you talk about what the impact of that lack of diversity has been, and what the research community is doing to try to improve that issue?
Yeah, that Nicole, another, really priority, urgent area of opportunity because we're in the circumstance now of the populations that are disproportionately affected, most at risk, African Americans and Hispanic or Latinos, as you mentioned when we first began, uh, disproportionately affected, but representing less than 5% of all clinical trial study participants for Alzheimer's and other dementia research, right? So, again, if you're saying that in layman's terms, the folks who are most at risk are less likely to be in the studies. And the implications are that we won't know if the treatments or the interventions are safe. Clinical trial testing is really exploring safety and efficacy, if they will be effective on these populations, right? And so this is a huge opportunity, I think, for us to examine the barriers, which could link into people's understanding of what it means to participate. There's the safety protocol that's in place to protect them, during their participation. Exploring barriers related to history, like the Tuskegee syphilis study, making sure that people understand where we are today, and establishing trust. And to become trustworthy means that we're consistent, we're transparent, and we are, really sharing these resources in a way where participating in a clinical trial is just one part of how we engage communities over time in a very sustainable way. So, I really think about the principles of community-based participatory engagement as ways to really link in with communities and to stay linked for this type of participation in research.
Yeah, and I think one of the really important things I've found with the families I've worked with in terms of research, and if they do get involved, is what a source of hope it is for them in their battle against Alzheimer's disease. And I think that's so important for people across all racial and ethnic groups to experience that sense of hope. And I think that improves people's, it improves stigma about the disease they have. It improves their wanting to get a diagnosis. It's just really key. And when you have groups that are left out of that, they're missing more than they're missing the ability to be in those studies and those benefits and things, but they're even missing something in terms of their sense of hope and their ability to deal with this diagnosis that they have.
Absolutely, Nicole. Being, under a doctor's care for many health outcomes, including Alzheimer's and other dementia, is just a good thing. It's a good circumstance, right? So being there. So I totally agree with you. But in addition to that, there's also I think the need to evaluate what strategies work best for engaging and recruiting in these diverse communities, right? So there's a science of recruitment and retention where investigators, engagement specialists can get together and share what worked, what
Yep.
may not have worked so well, so that we can begin, creating a community in itself, if you will, of experts that are really committed to this process or science of getting everyone into these trials, particularly these populations that are most at risk and disproportionately affected.
Yeah. So I know in your work at the association, you get the opportunity to talk to people across the country about what they're doing in terms of making differences to improve health equity, particularly as it relates to dementia. Could you share, what one of the most promising efforts you've seen in this area in your work?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the work of the U.S. Pointer study, which is really examining the different components of a healthy lifestyle, which in this case is physical activity and nutrition and staying cognitively stimulated, right? So if we're saying, as we said at the outset, that cardiovascular factors along the life course, could be very important for understanding the disparities that African Americans and Latinos endure with Alzheimer's later in life, then understanding how lifestyle, right, really plays a part in this risk is very important. Researchers are understanding what's good for the heart is good for the brain, right? So if we can begin to understand what that recipe of lifestyle, and then maybe taking a step back, even farther to understand the contextual factors for access to foods for a healthy diet, access to opportunities to participate in physical activity. How do people cope with stress, and how does that play out in some of their health behaviors? If we can begin to understand that, then I think we can even more begin to address some of the disparities that we see with these disproportionately affected populations.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's going to be really exciting to see what kind of results come out of US Pointer, and
Absolutely.
really giving people some real tools, and hopefully that recipe for what they can do to reduce their risk is going to be really exciting.
Very exciting, Nicole. Yep.
So I do have two questions that came through in the comments. I'm gonna read the first one that came through, which is which relates to a few things we've talked about more specifically. But it's a question about how to approach a caregiver if they're reluctant to get a diagnosis or help because they might be embarrassed. Do you have any suggestions in that area?
Yeah, I think this is this process of engagement and being authentic, and really helping a caregiver or anyone to understand, what we have to offer in terms of resources and how important it is. I mean, Nicole, you mentioned it, to be, with the doctor, to have a doctor really provide an examination and to provide those resources is just a good thing, to receive that kind of feedback, and that may take time. It's always the product of multiple discussions and conversations to put people, first, at ease, and then begin to build this relationship of trust. So I think communication is so important with a cultural, not just sensitivity, right, but also accountability and sustainability. Really understanding what people may have endured in interactions with the healthcare system and having them share them with us as well. So creating that channel of communication where we can build on that, and then really use that trust level to include them in the many resources that we have to offer. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think the other thing, sometimes a really simple thing, if people come to me asking this question, and we do often get calls to the helpline asking us, how can I help someone get help? But I'll often say to them, why don't the next time you're over there, you call with them?
That's
you
right.
know and I think sometimes to see that that you trust the 24/7 helpline and the Alzheimer's Association, you're there with them to make that call, can really make a big difference, because it's hard to reach out, when you don't know what to expect on the other end, and it's not an organization you trust yet. But if the person trusts you, it can go a long way to make that kind of introduction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the
Support is key. That's very
it is
important.
key,
Yeah.
definitely. Um, so the other question that I have, is kind of specific to the work at the Alzheimer's Association, and wondering what the Alzheimer's Association itself is doing to improve health equity.
Yeah, so one of our avenues is U.S. Pointer. I think U.S. Pointer has a very strong focus on equity in the ways that we're working with communities to recruit diverse populations. We're also engaging in a study, the New Idea study. So we know that PET imaging, for amyloid is really foundational and was really instrumental in helping us to see Alzheimer's in the living brain. So one opportunity with the first idea study was to include more diversity. So there's a new idea study where we're focused specifically on recruiting 4,000 African American and Latino participants, right? So this really gives us this lens of equity, right? Equity and PET imaging to see if that technique, that revolutionary technique, has the same clinical usefulness and utility for these diverse populations. Very specifically focused on underrepresented, disproportionately affected populations. And then, also important is the way that we engage, right? So we're looking to create partnerships with local community-based organizations that champion the health and well-being of African Americans, Native Americans, Asian Americans, and all kind of understudied and underrepresented, disproportionately affected populations in this pursuit of equity, right? And so we really believe that this partnership development and coalition building among community-based organizations that represent these populations can really help us as we seek to engage these communities and share our valuable resources as they relate to concern and awareness, education, and care and support, right? So those are some ways that we can't do this alone. We have to partner with organizations that have that trust, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, Nicole, in communities, so that we can enhance our trustworthiness and do the work that we actually and that we so much want to get done with these communities.
Well, that's really exciting to hear about that progress, both in the area of research, but also in the area of these community partnerships to really improve our ability to raise awareness among diverse populations, and also to learn how we can, I think, improve the services that we do provide for different kinds of populations. I think that you said this really well. We can't do it alone, and there are a lot of organizations out there who are concerned about health equity, and if we work together, I think that's where we're really going to see a lot of progress in this area, much needed progress.
Absolutely, Nicole. And as you know, everything that we do is in participation and engagement, and we're all able to realize, I think, our vision of a world without Alzheimer's and all other dementia, for all communities, by collaboration and working together.
Well, I want to take time to thank you, Dr. Hill, for taking time out of your busy schedule today to talk with us today about racial and ethnic differences in dementia. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure that our viewers did too. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Nicole.
And
Talk to you
please,
soon.
sure, and please remember that you can visit our website, alz.org, or call our 24/7 helpline at 800-272-390 anytime for any more information that you're looking for. We hope you join us next week when we're going to be talking about challenging behaviors. Have a great day.